Can you hear me now?
Yep.
You could hear me now?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you perfectly. I'm
Okay.
testing. Oh, that works. Testing, testing, one, two, three.
Yep. Got it.
Okay. So we're in business.
Very good.
Okay, Baruch Hashem. We're back in business. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I was thinking over today's the Yorshad of Rabbi Yaakov Yosef. He was the Rav Harashi of New York, and although he was a very big celebrity when he arrived, but he took on kashrus, and since he took on kashrus, he fell on the wrong side of some crooks who were selling kosher meat, non-kosher meat, under the guise of kosher meat. At the end of the 1800s, and he died right at the beginning of the 1900s. So I should have said at the turn of the century, but it's really the turn of the last century. Okay, so let's see where we're up to. I think we weren't able to finish the daf yesterday. It was too long, so we left 3 lines of yesterday's daf for today. 2 people are having a dispute over karka, and each one claims that it was my father's. But nobody has a chazaka in it, nobody has edim. So the psak is Omer Rav Nachman called the alam davar. Whoever's stronger wins. What is this psak of called the alam davar? Zogt the Rashbam. It's bein berais, bein bekoyach. Either the person who's mishametz more to come up with a raya, or he's stronger and he's able to prevent his opponent from taking over the property. The Moshe Posek of Nachman of Fanenu called Alam Bav. Like I'm not going to pass the last. Okay. Actually, that response is going back on last sugya, but that's the same psak. So now the question is, oh, I'm jumping ahead of myself. I apologize. So let's see the Gemara back. Freit Gemara umay shna mishnei stars. Rav Nachman paskins by a property that no one has a proof on. Hold on, Gavar. Why is it that in the case of Shnei Stars, we either say Achloiku or Shuda Dani, which are 2 sakalachas that are not called on? So what was the case? Shnei Stars hayotzim b'yarmech. 2 stars who are dated identically. As the Rashbam says, hayotzim lefanenu al sada achas shel Ruvain, shekasav shtar matana l'Shimon, ushtar matana l'Levi. Ruvain gifted his field through a star to Shimon, and he also gifted the same field through a star to Levi. Ushneim b'yom echad. They're both dated for the same day. Nobody has a stronger grasp of this property than the other. Shimon and Levi are both in the same boat. Vafilu nisbar sheshimon b'shachar v'Levi acharav b'erev. Even if we could bring Adam that the star was given to Shimon in the morning and the star was given to Levi in the afternoon, so you might argue that Shimon's matana occurred first and Levi's matana is nothing. That's not true, Dr. Rashbam, because ein ha'hakdama b'shois ela b'Yerushalayim. When we have stars, our stars are not time stamped. They're totally in the day. And Vivalta totally in the day, their chalois won't be nageya until the end of the day. I just had a big mouthful, so we'll see the Rashbam as he develops it further. The mother of Rami Bar Chama b'tzafer in the morning kasvesinu l'nichsi l'Rami Bar Chama. In the morning, she wrote Oliver and Chosim over to Rami Bar Chama, her son Rami. This is such a good way to make a family war. It's unbelievable. In the afternoon, she gifted all of her assets to her other son, Marukva. And who got it to Rukva, even though even though he was later, even though he received this gift in the afternoon. And the reasoning was, are we in Yerushalayim, the coast and choice, where shtaris are time stamped? So you might ask, okay, so the raya of the star are both the same because the stars aren't time stamped. But Lamaisa, when I gave the star, that's what created the matana. So if I could prove, in fact, that I received the star earlier, why wouldn't we say that the matana was given to me, and therefore the matana could not have been given to the person later? Zakter Rashbam, since when Reuben in the star did not detail what time it was, nimsa shaloizi keyu b'ksavzeh at ha'eretz. That means the star will not create the chalois until the day ends. So in this particular case, both kinyonim happen simultaneously. Now Tosfos delves a little deeper into the discussion, and he says, really it will depend on if you say Eide Chasima Karsi or Eide Mesira Karsi. If the Eide Chasima creates the kinyan, naturally they occur simultaneously, because the Eide Chasima don't have a time on it, so their chalois will be chal at the last possible moment that would correspond with the date on the star. But if you hold Eide Mesira Karsi, then in fact it's possible that if the Mesira of one was done before the Mesira of the other, then in fact one of the kinyonim would be relevant. So we're going to see in a minute the machloikis in the case of shtaris and how Tosfos deciphers that. Any one of the above. Yeah. The Rashbam says either if he's a stronger, tougher guy, or if he could find some type of evidence. It could be physical force, don't know. Usually probably is physical force. Shmuel Fatach is very good. Shmuel said it goes to the person whose name begins with a Z and ends with a K. That's how Shmuel touched. Called on. Shmuel read some Zach. Zach to Gemara. So what was the case of the state starts to go up in Mechad? Rav Omar Yachloi. Rav holds you split it. Rashi said, the Rashbam says, the Sveiko, it's a suffix. So this is a little bit difficult. Rashi says it's a suffix. It's not really a suffix. It's a vadai. It's a vadai that both of the matanas were chal simultaneously at the end of the day. So Tosfos will address that. Shmuel Amar Shuda the Dayan. What does Shuda the Dayan mean? La'isai shayehei noita leifat ayonim shahaya hanoisin oihavoi oikroiva yois. The Dayanim have to make an assessment. The mother, Reuben gave a gift to Shimon and to Levi. Well, who did he really want to give the gift to? Who does he like better? So they have to delve into those relationships and try to figure out who Reuben really wanted to give it to. The vadai lahu gomer v'akni loy yitnu zakarka. That's who will get the karka. V'sema zacha. Let's see the Gemara. V'shema ata zacha balakarka b'shaloi. So it's possible that this person is in his own property because it was all given to him. If you're going to say the psak of Rav, it was yachloiku, v'vadai echad notal hachetish loikedim. Surely one is taking his chelik shaloikedim. So Rav learns they're both chal at the same time, but Shmuel says it's possible that he meant to give it to one over the other, and therefore you don't want to split it because then you know for sure you're doing something wrong. Where did the word shuda come from? It's thrown to the opinion of the court. Okay. Zok to Gemara, there's a very big difference between our situation where two people are fighting over karka, each one saying it was for my father, and the case of the star, where the star was written to Shimon and to Levi. Hasam leka lemekim aladamils. There, Bezin can make a final psak. You know why? because it will be impossible ever to come up with any type of raya that would clarify who exactly got it. It's this scenario. We don't know who belongs to. So therefore, Bezdin could sort of go out on a limb and pass with finality, or shoot at the dining. But Hacha, in our case, it is possible at some later date that one of these two people are going to come with Adam. In fact, that this Kaka belonged to his father. So Hacha Ikala make a Malada Milsa, and therefore the Bezdin will not issue a psak. Let's see the response. Hasan bevei stars lekala make a Malada Milsa. Hayoim ilamachar sheyavia echad Adam vita. There is no type of clarification that would ever place the property into one or the other's rishus. Both of the stores have exactly the same date. And even if Adam are going to come and they're going to say testimony, it doesn't matter who got the star first. The lekala meimar it doesn't matter when each person got the star. It's not the Mesira that creates the kinyan, that creates the transfer of the matana. It's the date on the star. The they're probably given over the same day. We are going to see soon in Tosfos, and that's probably what the Rishbam is referring to, that even though they're both dated the same day, if they're given on different days, it might have an impact on when the kinyan is chal. So that's where the Rishbam sticks in. The assumption is that they both receive the star on the same day, because generally someone will receive the star on the day that's dated on the star. That's why Rav Cholkin. The hoyel the ein levar leolam adin imi, since there's no way we'll ever be able to know who is in the right. Therefore, mishtadlin bezdin bedinan v'dan naisay. So bezdin will issue a psak. Avol halka by karka the lekalo star lo edim the ikala mekem alad milsa. But it is possible that at some time in the future we'll get clarity. Im yavoyu v'ya'idu shalmiyu. Therefore, ein kan aloymar chaluka v'shuda. Bezdin can't step in here and make a definitive psak. The shema yavoyu edim v'yistu is hadin shadanu bezdin. Because it's quite possible that tomorrow, after they paskin, Edom are going to come and everything's going to change. Hilach ein bezdin niskakin lahem lodun din shesoifai lovai l'dei evils. So here the Rashbam is revealing how Kol Alam Gavar works. And he's saying it's not a psak of bezdin. Bezdin doesn't want to make a psak that's going to eventually be overturned. Ella manichan. They abandon it. In other words, they don't issue a psak. They're recusing themselves. Whoever is stronger wins until someone can actually bring proof. That is how the Rashbam learned. But Tosfos tells us that there's a lot more information. There's more layers of information that we have to peel back. In Ksubis, there was a machlokes of what Rav's svar is. Rav says yachloiku. Why does he say yachloiku? The time of the Rav, you should the sover Reb Meir. Rav holds like Reb Meir. The Amar Eidech Hasim Karsi. And if it's Eidech Hasim Karsi, it's like we said now, it's definitive that both of the stories were chal at the same time. L'kach yachloiku afilu ika Eidem Mesira tenimsha la'echad koidem. Even if we know Shimon got a star in the morning and Levi got a star in the afternoon, it doesn't matter, as the Rashbam says as well. You can't tell who's chal first. It's not to be learned. What happens if you write a get? If someone has two wives, an older wife and a younger wife, and he wrote Kosav Lagarish boy es Agdoila. He wrote the get with intent to be Megarish to Gdoila. Lo Yagarish boy is Aktana. He's not allowed to use this same get, assuming all the coordinates are the same, to be Megarish Diktana, because he wrote it for the Gdoila. Correct the Gemara, V'dayak HaGdoila Motzi Megarish Bay. So you could use this get for the Gdoila? You mean it's a kosher get? Umukila, it must be the Eidem Mesira. There had to be an Eidem Mesira. Why? Because the Eidem Chasima wouldn't help here. Because the Eidem Chasima doesn't convey with clarity who is the woman that's receiving this get. And if it's not clear in the get who it's for, the get's puzzle. So why would the get be good even for the Gdoila? The teretz is the Eidim Asira aren't those that are critical for the Chalais. It's Eidim Asira. And the Eidim Asira will be able to tell us exactly who received the get. The names are the same. Most of the names are the same, yeah. So Mukla for Rabbi Loza, it's going on Rabbi Loza holds Eidim Asira Karson. Yeah. Aval Reb Meir, but according to Reb Meir, it's so much easier. Then they could share. Then they could share a set of machzorim. All the gifts you could buy, they could share, right? Aval Reb Meir, afilu gedoyla leimotzi megarish. According to Reb Meir, you couldn't even use this for the gedoyla. So now we see how strongly Rabbi Lazar and Reb Meir Shita are going to affect our sugya. So if Rab holds Yachloiku because of Reb Meir, Zok then you can ask a kasha to call down over. The whole thing is not relevant over here. It's Yechloiku because it's not a suffix. So there would be no comparison from our case of we don't know who this property belongs to the case of the Shtar Matana. Because it's not a suffix. It's a Vadai belongs to both of them. So that wouldn't even be a kasha. So according to that Lashon, this whole sugi is not even relevant. It has to be evident from the shtar itself, from the Eidech Chasim itself, who this get was for. Umari b'matana or b'mecher, shekoina b'shtar. So as the Rashbam says, Tosfos says as well, the discussion here is the Reuven is writing the shtar to give it to either Levi or Shimon. But if the Kinyan, in this case, happened to have been Kesav or Chazaka, and the shtar was just written as a receipt, as a proof of Bechalipin, the Einar Shtar Oimid El Araya, there Avada Moida Rab, Darmin and Shuda, because it didn't happen at the same time. If the Kinyan was not done with the shtar, there was a different Kinyan that was used. The shtar is just being used as a receipt, as a proof. There, it doesn't make a difference. What happens by the Chasima, the Chalois is going to be Chal at the time of the external Kinyan. Kiven de Eino Ella L'Raya. So Zok Toises La Oisa Loshen Loi Porach Merafa. On this Loshen, that Rav was paskin in Yachloiku because they were both Chal at the same time, it's not relevant to our Sugya. The Hasan Bedin Hu Shal Shneim. In that case, Minadina belongs to Shimon and Levi together, because the chalois of their matana were chal simultaneously, given the b'yom echad nechtem. So Zok Tosfos, if you learn Pshat and Rav, like the Rashbam learned, as a matter of fact, that there's no subject here at all. They were both chal at the same time. Rav is b'chalal not relevant to our sugya. The kasha that our sugya is asking must be from Shmuel. And the Shmuel Parach will appear Rabbeinu Tam. Now, Rabbeinu Tam also has a different shot on Shuda D'Daini. Rashi says Shuda D'Daini means Bezdin has to analyze who they think Reuven gave it to, right? That's not what Tosfos means. Tosfos, you know what Shuda D'Daini means? They can do whatever they want. They can give it to whoever they like better. They can give it to whoever they want. Well, the Pirish Rabbeinu Tam, the Pirish Shuda D'Daini, Masha Yirtza Hadayin Yaseh, the Dayan can do whatever he wants. As Shaper, then it makes sense in this case. The Hachanami was Aimer Shalavoisoi Shaykh Shuda D'Daini. So Rabbi Tam Tosfos asking a kasha. Bishlama, according to Rashi, it's going to be very fair. Because Rashi holds we have to decide with Shuda D'Daini, who Reuven wanted to give it to. So there, Shuda D'Daini is a psak that you could apply to Reuven giving a matana to either Shimon or Levi. But how can you apply Shuda D'Daini to a case where one guy says it was my father's and the other guy says it was my father's? Shuda D'Daini can't apply there because what are they supposed to figure out? What are they supposed to assess? So how can you ask a kasha from Shmuel on our case if Shuda D'Daini b'chalal is not a psak was passed b'chalal by this shayla? So if you learn Shuda D'Daini means they can do whatever they want, well then it passed perfectly even in that case. So according to Rabbi Tam, that works out good. Aval Afirish HaKuntrish, Shemafar Shuda, L'mishin Nir L'dayin Shoya Oyavoyoser Kosher. The Bezah Omer Shalavoisai Lo Shayach Shuda. But Tosfos comes to the rescue. No, but v'yesh litchak l'farish. Maybe you could say pshat there as well. They'll speak to each guy individually and try to flush out who they trust more. So could be shooting the dani applies there as well. But the lalulishne Yosy, the Yosy, the Muki Pluta, the Rabbi Shmuel, Alibud Rabbi Lazar. If the machlokes is Alibud Rabbi Lazar, in other words, a the Mesir Karsi. So then, why? What's pshat in Rav? Why did he say yachloiku? Yachloiku makes perfect sense if you hold the chesima karsi, because the yachloiku is not a suffix; it's a vaday psak. Both of them are tons for chal at the same time. According to Belazar, we don't know. He might have given the star earlier to one than he did to the other. So what will be the svar of Rav? The Rav, the chaluka adifa. He holds that splitting is a better psak than shooting the daini. So now it makes sense why our Gemara is asking from Rav on our case. We see the Rav, the Chaluk Adivos, he shaper the Parach Merav. Well, Oysa Lashon Hu Iker, anyways, Tosfos, the Lashon who learns Pshat and Rav is Rav is saying is Allah according to Rabbi Eliezer, and the Yachloiku is not a psak because we know for sure that's what happened. Yachloiku is the way to deal with the suffix. That's the Lashon that was more accepted anyway in Ksubis, and with that Lashon, our Gemara makes more sense because our Gemara's kasha was from Rav. Okay, Zok Tahedek Gemara Vayter. Second. Okay. What's the difference from this case? Now we're going to have to get clarity. Are we asking a kasha from our Gemara? What's the difference between our Gemara, where we say called Alam Gavar, and the case that we're about to suggest over here? Or are we asking what's the difference between the case of Rav and Shmuel and the case that we're about to suggest? So we're going to have to see. What happened was, we had this case before several times. I own a para, and I have my para in New York, in upstate New York. And you have a chamar, and your chamar is in Muskoka. And we decided that we're going to swap. So we decided that I'm going to come and make a meshicha on your chamar in Muskoka, and then automatically, through Kinyan Chalipin, my para that's in the Catskills will become yours. And we did that. But then we found out that right around the time that I made that Kinyan, this par gave birth. Now the question is, when the par gave birth, was it pre the Kinyan, and therefore I owned the Vlad? Or did the par give birth post Kinyan, and therefore you own the Vlad? So Amach Lepar V'Chamar V'Yalda, V'chein Amoicha Shivchasai V'Yalda, or if you sell your Shivcha for Kinyan Kesef, because Kinyan Kesef works on the Shivcha, so you were not necessarily at the location of the Shivcha when the Kinyan was done, and then we don't know, did the Shivcha give birth when she belonged to the Lakach, or did the Shivcha give birth when she still belonged to the Moicher? So right off the bat, if it's a kasha on the last case, it's not a kasha on Rav, because Rav says Yachloiku there as well, right? So we have to sort out now who this kasha is on. So let's have a look at the Rashbam. Let's see where we are over here. Yachloiku. I'm looking at the Rashbam Yachloiku. In this case, Kivan the Ikalameka Maloda Mills. This is a case where eventually we might be able to find out when the baby was born. So right off the bat, called Alam Gobar would be a good psak. Im Yavoyu Edim be either B'Shus Miyolda. Va'afilu Achi Lo Yamin called Alam Gobar. The Kasha Lo Rav Nachman. So the Rashbam makes it very clear that the kasha here is going back on our case. By our case, you say called Alam Gavar, and we just said the reason why you say called Alam Gavar is Bezdin will not issue a psak on something that could possibly be clarified in the future. Yet here they paskined Yachloiku, they should have paskined called Alam Gavar. So Zok to Gemara, Hassam, Zok to Gemara, Hassam, over there, by the case of Machlef Par B'Chamor, Lahai Isle Drar Demamina, Ulahu Isle Drar Demamina. Each one of the Baladin, the Lakeach and the Moicher, each has a derora demona. We'll see what that means. But hacha, here, for the case of the property, idemar loidemar, the idemar loidemar. In the case of machal par b'chamor, each one has a connection to the animal, and we'll see what that means in the Rashbam in a moment. But in the case of the property, who it belonged to, if he belongs to Reuven, it has no shaykhs to Shimon because it was Reuven's father, and if it belongs to Shimon, it has no shaykhs to Reuven. That's why we would say kol dalam gavar, but in the case of drora de momina, we will not say kol dalam gavar. Okay, so let's see how the Rashbam defines drora de momina. Zok the Gemara hasam. I mean the Rashbam hasam. Hasam gabay hamachlif par b'chamor litervayu islahu drora de momina. Both have a claim of drora de momina. What is the definition of drora de momina? Shapara v'ashivcha shel shneim hoysa b'zachazeh. We know for sure each one of these people, the moicher and lekech, owned the shivcha at one point in time. There's a very good claim that it was my shivcha, it was my behema that gave birth, because I did own it. The moicher owned it right before the sale. The lekech owned it right after the sale. The cholechad, the echad, toin, parasi, v'shivchasi, yolda, v'hiyaytza b'shusi. It happened when I was its owner. Inami, or there's even a possibility that b'shas chalipin yolda, that it happened precisely at the moment that the kinyan chalipin was done, and therefore ve'ein levarer el mi hava vlad, it would be impossible to determine precisely who the vlad belongs to. Therefore, there's an argument that she should be achlek. Mashenki, in our case, one person that never had any shaykhs to it. So Rashbam is learning George Roman means I had a connection to it. Since each person at one point did have a connection and therefore has a decent claim that this vlad belongs to him, therefore we're going to say achloku. We're not going to say because each person is connected to it. So each person gets part of it. It's almost like a different type of muhsik, sort of. We're each somewhat connected to it. But the property, they're for sure both not connected. And now,
how does it touch the word druzi? What is druzi?
I understood the connection.
If he says clear cut claim.
Okay, a clear claim. Okay, I would say the connection, but however you want to define it, I think that's what it means.
Enough. That's before the question came about. Who he owned at one point, he owned at one point. But the real question over here is only for the baby. That's not clear cut.
True, but each one has a strong claim to it because I owned its mother at a certain point. Mashenkin, I hear that's not such a strong claim, but it's a stronger claim than me saying this property was my father's when it was Nishka Steigen, Nishka Floigen. Here, each guy has a very strong connection to it because they own the mother at some point. But the guy whose property it's not never had any shaykhs to this property at all. So now Rashi is another kasha. Okay, so true, the kasha was on our case, but Lamaisa, why isn't there a kasha on Shmuel? Shmuel says Shuda the Daini. Why doesn't he say Shuda the Daini by Machal Par B'Chamor as well? If he likes that psak, why didn't he say that? The Shuda the Daini Leka Lememer Hacha Afilu L'Shmuel. You know why? The L'Shayich Lememer Elagabe Matana L'Shnayim. The only time you could say Shuda the Daini is if Reuven's giving a matana, they could possibly make an assessment who they like better. Sheyur Bezin, Lemi Ayiv Yoser, the Gomer Makli. But in the case of Reb Nachman, or in the case of Hamachla Par B'Chamor, what Shuda the Daini are they going to do? They can't even use the Shuda the Daini of Rabbeinu Tam that, or Toshis wants to emphasize from, that they can look to see who they think is saying the truth. Because by Machal Par B'Chamor, neither one even knows. So therefore, there's no kasha. You should say Shuda the Daini. And your chloiku is perfect. That's what Rav says. So Shmuel would be moida that you would say chloiku in this case. But in the case of the property, where each guy claims to belong to my father, idamar loy damar. If it belongs to Reuven, Shimon never had any connection to it whatsoever. V'yesh mefarshim, hai umai shnomei amachlif is not a kasha on our sugya, like the Rashbam just explained. Rather, that the Shmuel part, it was an independent kasha on Shmuel. The Ka'amar Shuda, Shmuel says Shuda, and here you see there's a yachloiku. That can't be pshat. The habiksubis, the perik misha yinasi, isa ikar milsayu de Rav Shmuel. The main sugi of Rav and Shmuel is in Ksubas. And there the Gemara asks different kashas on Rav and Shmuel, and they never bring up this kasha. Over here, clear, the Rashbam says, like I say, is that the kasha here was on Rav Nachman on the question of who owned the property, whose father owned the property. It's not relevant to their child. And the answer would be, because of what Rashbam said a minute ago, that you cannot use Shuda the Daini to pass in the case of a Machal Par B'Chamor, because what are they supposed to assess? It's a question about what happened in Maskon. So that is how Rashi or the Rashbam learns Durari the Mamona. Tosfos has a different shot in Durari the Mamona, so let's take a quick peek at it on the top of the base. Tosfos says is Pirish the Dal kind of Seyamei. In this case of Machal Par B'Chamor, even if neither Baldin even opened his mouth, we see the whole suffix presented in its entirety without the Baldin even opening his mouth. The Dal Tainei Sayim Hacha, even if each of the Baldin are silent, Yeshavik Lebezdin, the Haiminayu Havavlad. Imnodat Kodim Shemacher, Leacha Shemacher. And the same thing goes Shoshanak Sapara, and we don't know if the baby was born before Ushtois or after Ushtois. Abul Hacha, I'm skipping now to the bottom of Tosfos. Abul Hacha in our case, Bezemish Levoisai. The only reason why there's a suffix here is because each person came to Bezdin and explained his argument as to why it should be his father's. So Peter is saying, Ba suffix, there is a Armin called Alam Gover. So if this scenario is be'etzim a suffix, that's where you can say achloiku. If there's only a suffix here because each person is presenting his taina, then you'll say call Alam Gover. It's like what there's a kid in the yeshiva, his name was Wine. I don't remember his first name. Remember there are two Wine brothers? I forgot the first name. So one of them became, he still is. He was Kaiser, right? So he once said as follows. He says sometimes you're arguing and learning with somebody. So he would be arguing with Shavrusa, and he would say, your svar is krum as a corkscrew. And he would say, and if main is krum as a pretzel. If main krum as a corkscrew, what's the difference between krum as a corkscrew and krum as a pretzel? A pretzel is not a piece of dough. Boom, they decided to make it in that shape. Your krum is a corkscrew. In other words, corkscrew wouldn't be krum, it wouldn't be a corkscrew. So it's be'etzim krum. That's how krum your spards. That's what he said once. So Gerard de Romana is krum is a corkscrew. It's without anything. Minei obeyed them. It sees as a shayla. What happened? My thinking that's not the argument.
It's not a noilet mitzvah. Okay, if I give it to two people, then and the class is schwer, and I'm not sure if it's the item Sirikas or item.
We're not talking about that case.
When the baby was born in somebody's wishes, I don't know when it was.
That's right. But Belit had the same Yeshavik Lebest. Even if nobody opens their mouth, they do the suffix.
Why does this belong to somebody? Because to whose parents it belonged, it was this.
Right.
It's the same thing. And if this baby was born before the sale, then it was to show that person. If the baby was born after the sale, to show that it's something. I don't know it.
That's called a suffix. You don't since you don't know it's a suffix.
The same thing is what these towns say.
That's true. In that respect, they're the same. But in this respect, they're different. Because you have to relate to the same. You're mentioning one way in which they're the same. I agree. In that way, they're the same. But Lamata, there, even if nobody opens their mouth, the suffix stands up.
He also said it's possible that it was born at that exact moment, so it's suffix.
Yeah, that's also possible. That's right. Okay, so let's see the Gemara. But at the end of the day, all of these students jump out at you just when that happened, even before any of the Baldin express anything. They don't have to come and present their tiny. They don't have to say work. Just this case alone is a suffix. Okay, so let's see what the Gemara says right there. Amar Nardoi. The people from Nardoi said, V'im bo echad min hashuk v'hichzik. It's called Alam Gover, meaning nobody has proof that it's his. So what if a third guy comes along? Well, if no one knows what it is, I'll come and take it. So what if a third guy comes and take it? Ein moitin oisim yadai. You would not take it away from him. The Tani Rav Chia said, Gazlan shal Rabbim, lav shemei Gazlan. Here he took something from the Rabbim. It either belongs to Reuben or to Shimon, but Reuben and Shimon don't have it. If he takes it, he can keep it, because Rav Chia said, Gazlan shal Rabbim, lav shemei Gazlan. At this point, the Gemara understands Rav Chia's words as saying that I'm not a Gazlan, I have to give it back. Rav Ashi says, that's not what Rav Chia meant. Lo'elam shemei Gazlan. Sorry?
1,000. That was from one person. We don't know who it is.
So we don't, if it's from one of two people, we don't know whose it is.
He said-
So let's hear Rashi.
Oscar says this might actually be each time. Right, and then to do math,
So let's hear Rashi. Sorry, Darshko gets it from the Rishbam. Sorry, Nardoi, the begazan ki ha Mairi. When Rav Chia said gazan for Rabbim, he meant this, right? This is to the Rishbam is bavoning your kasha. She goes on mishnayim hachaluka medover. Rav Chia meant Gezel's Rabbim means you stole from two people who are arguing over something. Anyone who steals from such a scenario, since you can't prove that it's yours and you can't prove that it's yours, I can keep it. That's what the Nardoi thought that Rav Chia meant. But Rav Ashi says, no, that's not what he meant at all. Rav Ashi you have to give it back. He's going to have to pay each one back individually because he won't be able to be Mekayim and Schiva Shava until he gives it to the person who he knows who is the rightful owner. Since he's not saying anything, and you take it away from him, means he has no claim to it. Therefore, you take it away from him. And they still can go back and fight. But what does it mean? The Kamar of Chia is Leila Hakel they're just being machmer with him. If he's telling Chumrah, then now you're going to have to give it to each person. So that's a very good idea. If two people are fighting over the Kol Al Gavar, they should try to get somebody to steal it. And then they'll force him to pay both. So let's get back to our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said, what's a chazaka on the field? 3 years. And just to refresh our memory a little bit, that was only a field that has its own internal irrigation because there's no seasons. It grows all year, so you need 3 full years of payers. But if it was a seasonal type of field because it relies on rainwater and depending on the planting season, then it wouldn't take 3 full years. Amar Bava, idali lei iu gufe tzadid peri. What if the buyer is gathering pears and the seller comes into the buyer's field and helps him load up the baskets of pears and is involved in helping this guy get his pears? So that's a pretty good indication that that was a sale, because you're not going to help somebody package up his pears if he's stealing the property from you. So therefore, la'alter have a chazaka, it's a chazaka right away. Let's see what the Rishbam says. Idali le'tzad the pear la'alter have a chazaka im yesh edim she'gbia hama ayr tzana the pear mikar kazu al ksevav shol zeh ha'machzik she'toyin l'kuch biyadi. The owner, the original owner of the property, lifted up a basket and helped load up the buyer. That's a very clear indication that he's cooperating, that there was a sale here. Sorry? Because if it's stolen property, since you helped him, it's mafsid you because it's an indication of chamoida to machal. So Dovi is bringing up something you thought it was cynical. It's very halacha l'maisa, because maybe it was bad pairs. We're going to get there in a second. You're right on. So once again, if the owner, the original owner, actually is seen and is witnessed as having helped the harvest, that's a clear indication that it was a good sale. But Amar Abzvit, but what if, and this is referring to what Dovi mentioned, what if I said, Dimtan v'Amar leperes arativ? I didn't sell the property. You know why I was helping him load up? Because I sold him the pears, and I wanted him to take the pears out quickly, which is exactly what Dovi is saying. Dimtan v'Amar leperes arativ, Nemon, that would counteract the taina of the. So let me ask you a question. There's Adam that come along and says, I help. So now it's automatic chazak. How could I undo it? By claiming, no, I sold him the pears. The pears are his. The property is mine. It undoes it. So Frank Toisvis. So what if I say it's not a chazak, it's my pear, it's my land, and it's my pears? Believe me, legally, that I could have said that I only put him to the pears. So I don't. Once I have that legally, so then there's once Reb Zvid says the pears are out there, so now I should have a mikvah. So then it should never be a good chazak. So that's Toisvis' kasha. So let's look at the Toisvis that transitions from the skinny lines to the wide lines. Bim time of Rektosis, Vilhem Bemigu, the Eboy Omar, Le Paris Eraditive. Vieshloimar, to have a Migu Vimokim Edim. Why? The Anan Sahadi, even the Dala Ton of the Peri, Moida, Shahoyu Paris Shaloi. It's such a strong Eichacha when you're helping somebody. If you didn't tell him the Paris, that the whole property belongs to him, that therefore it's a Migu Vimokim Edim. Or the other reason why it's not a Migu is if you say the Paris Eraditive, then you're letting him have the Paris. You're claiming that he has to pay you back the land that way. So Zok to Gemara Vayter, I'm going to go over it. It was a short daf. I thought I should finish early. So Zok to Gemara, that's only within 3 years he can claim the parish Aradi. The guy's there has a chazak for 3 years, and Adam come and say that he ate the parish for 3 years. I can't come and say Shkoich he ate the parish for 3 years. I sold him the parish of my property for 3 years, but it's not a chazaka. It's just a sale of parish. Loy. There you don't say it. Amar of Kana, I don't understand. What if it's legit? What if I taka sold the guy parish for 10 years? How am I going to prevent him from stealing my property? What exactly was I supposed to do? You should have made a macha. And the macha would be not that you're stealing my property, you're in my property illegally, because you're there legally. It's a different type of macha. You're there legally, but you're only there for payers. You don't own my property. If you're not going to say, Dr. Rashbam, that a macha, where I'm not calling you a thief, I'm saying you're there legitimately, but you're there for payers. If you're not going to agree to me that that's considered a good macha, then hani mashkanta de surah. We have the case of mashkanta de surah, where what happens is you owe me $100,000. You don't have the money to pay me, so you give me your property at a rate of $10,000 a year. I have it for 10 years, and then I give it back to you, and your chayv is paid off. If I'm holding on to your property for 10 years, what stops me from now stealing it from you and claiming that I bought it from you? The cost of Bahu, B'Mishlam Shani Alain, the end of this period of time, Tepik double the land will go back for no payment because it paid off the chayv. What are we going to do? He covers like the shtar mashkanta gabe. What if the malva hides the shtar mashkanta and claims that he bought the property and he was there for 10 years and no one said a word? Hachanami de behemet. Correct, Gemara, could you say that would be possible? That means this whole takonta of mashkanta the surah is actually a bad thing. Misakni Rabbanan Midi, the Osi Bey, the Pseda. Would your Rabbanan set up a system of mashkanta the surah if it could lead to such disasters? Ella, what are you going to say? By the mashkanta the surah, the loiva every couple of years has to go in front of Adam and say that this is mashkanta the surah, and it's not a sale. So too, if you sell somebody long term, the payers of your property, every couple of years you have to go to Adam and say that I didn't sell the property, they're just there for the payers. Okay, we'll stop here.